Welcome back, everybody. Another edition of Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports Original podcast. Scott Gulbransen and Mo Moton back with you to talk Raiders football. Do us a favor, make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio. If you're watching us on video, subscribe there, hit that thumbs up, and don't forget the notifications bell. We appreciate it. We're back. We're here, Raider Nation. Not good times. We understand where you're at mentally. We've seen it in the social interwebs over the last few days since the Raiders 31-0 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, in which is one of the worst games I've seen, to be honest with you. But Mo is back, and Mo is, of course, the senior NFL writer over at Bleacher Report, also covers the Raiders at sportsnaut.com. You can follow him on X at Mo Moton, Moemoton. I am at LV Gully. The show, SNB Today. Mo, listen, everybody wants everyone fired. Everybody wants all sorts of change. And we just hit week 7 going into the Raiders bye. But this Chiefs game, I mean, we have to unpack a lot in this first segment because so much went on in this game and so much points to issues that the Raiders have not resolved, many of them for years, and others are new to this season. But for you, watching this game, you and I both figured the Chiefs would win this game and most likely pretty easily. But what we saw on display was nothing that we could have predicted. Give me your initial thoughts now that you've had a couple days to think about it, to rewatch some of the highlights, and to really dive into what happened Sunday at Arrowhead.
First, I'll say I expected a double-digit loss, but I at least expected the Raiders to score some points. And I think the most irritating, annoying thing about this is you bring in this established head coach in Pete Carroll. Chip Kelly's the highest paid offensive coordinator in the league. You traded a third-round pick for Geno Smith, who's coming off 2 Pro Bowl years in Seattle. And you're thinking, okay, the Raiders are going to at least be competitive in a division and across the league. And you can make the argument that they're worse than they were with Antonio Pierce, Gardner Minshew, Aidan O'Connell, and Luke Getsy / Bo Hardegree. I don't understand how that happens. Any logical person will compare those two groups and say, well, inexperienced head coach to accomplished head coach. 2 backup quarterbacks to an established starter and a 2-time Pro Bowler in recent years. Luke Getsy and Bo Hardegree to Chip Kelly. Whether you love or hate Chip Kelly, understand he's done a lot more than Bo Hardegree and Luke Getsy as play callers. So you can logically say those are upgrades, right? The Raiders went from, I remember Antonio Pierce's presser, and he said, we're trying to score, I think he said 24 points. And, you know, they struggled to get to 20. But they were at least scoring points. Antonio Pierce, last year, they weren't getting shut out. There were no shutouts last year, right? The Raiders gave Andy Reid his first shutout win of the regular season in his career. The Raiders, and someone said this, they have a chance to beat the Browns. The Browns scored 31 points on last Sunday. That's more than the Raiders have scored in the last 3 weeks, Scott. The Raiders have only scored 26 points in the last 3 weeks. And by the way, they play the Titans in one of those games.
Yeah.
So it's a lot to unpack here, but it's unfathomable that you make all of these changes and the offensive product on the field is worse than it was under not only Antonio Pierce, but worse than it was under Josh McDaniels as well.
Yeah, and I think that's where people are going. They're trying to figure out, well, who's to blame? What do you blame? I mean, a lot of people, of course, want to go at Coach Pete Carroll. A lot of people want to go to Chip Kelly. You brought both of them up. Absolutely. Are they involved? Do they have some responsibility for it? Of course they do. Then people want to bring up John Spytek. And of course, as you and I have said multiple times on this show, when you have crappy ownership, and no offense to Mark Davis, but his tenure has been crap. There's no other way to go around it. Move to Vegas and all that jazz aside, it's been terrible. And so there's plenty of blame to go around. But to your point, the fact that we saw what happened with Antonio Pierce, and yes, you're right. They looked better under Antonio Pierce. Do I think Antonio Pierce is a good football coach? A head coach in the NFL, I should say? No, I still don't. This doesn't make me say, oh, well, they had a great coach and they got rid of him. No, it's not that at all. But when you go out there, and by the way, the 30 plays they ran, Mo, Only one other time. It has not happened since 1950 in the NFL. 1950. So when you talk about futility, and listen, we're not just here to rail and talk about all the crappy numbers, but that's the gravity of the situation. Pete Carroll goes out Monday in the press conference. Forget about the postgame. Monday, and says, what are you surprised by? Well, I'm surprised we're not further along. It's not even that they're not further along. They're further behind than he walked in the building. So when you look at that situation, what do you do, right? So what do? You can't just fire the coach. I mean, you could, but that's not going to happen, right? And I think this all goes back to, because there's so many tentacles here with this mess, Mo, but it goes back to organization. I don't see what the plan was this year. We had Raider Rube on the postgame show, came on and argued with Murph and I, saying, no, this was always a complete rebuild. That's not what we were told. And Rube said, don't go by what you're told, go by what you see. What did you see John Spytek do? So he had a point there, but I look at this organization. Is your plan to rebuild all the way up, and you want to do that with a 74-year-old coach? It made sense to me if they thought that they just needed 2 years, meaning they needed this year and then next year they would be ultra competitive, at least for a playoff spot. They're nowhere near that. This team, Mo, is no closer to the playoffs than the Jets, the Browns, and even the Browns had a big win yesterday where they actually scored points. I mean, this team is the bottom of the bottom.
I like that. I like what Ray Rube there said, because it's something that we frequently say on the show. Coach speak, GM speak. You hear it every year, every offseason. We're going to win games. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. I do agree with Ray Rube when he says pay attention to what's done. John Spytek, and I said this last week, he brought in 11 rookies. He traded back multiple times on day 2 in the second round, to the point it irritated some Raider fans and saying, make a pick already. So John Spytek, the way he moved in the offseason between conservative spending and free agency and his draft moves, it let you know that this was going to take some time to fill a roster that had plenty of holes and voids to fill. Pete Carroll comes out and says, we're going to win. And then he brings in Geno Smith, which gives you the idea. Pay attention to what they do. If you're bringing in Geno Smith, who's in his mid-30s, I know he mid-30 because he didn't start his entire career, but if you're bringing in a starting quarterback in his mid-30s and you're bringing in a 73, 74-year-old head coach, you're expecting to win some football games. You're not expecting to regress. That's the other part of this. If I were talking to Raider Rube, that's the other part of that, is that you bring in all this experience, you're expecting progression, right?
Yes.
Being regression through the weeks. The Raiders look worse than since that win in the season opener against the Patriots. They've looked worse virtually every week.
Yep.
They went from winning that road game to barely being able to score touchdowns. Scott, I said this on my Bleacher Report show. The Raiders have played 7 games, 2-5. In 3 of those games, they didn't score a touchdown. Chargers, Colts, Chiefs. Nearly half their games this season so far, they have not scored a touchdown.
Yeah. I mean, that's inexcusable in the NFL. I'm sorry. Yeah, you have a game here or there where you have trouble scoring. But the fact that they did this, and you're right. Look, actions versus words. But there's no doubt that at least publicly, now I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't have that information. But there's clearly a disconnect between coach and GM because of what you just laid out, of what John Spytek did, the actions he took. But he had to sign Geno Smith. So he was in on that. So that's raised the question, how much control, because Pete Carroll came in, he doesn't have the control he had in Seattle. So how much of a singular individual GM is John Spytek? Do we know? The press conference back, remember when they both joined? Well, who's going to make the decisions on players? Well, it's going to be a joint effort. Well, maybe John Spytek made an error in saying that and said, hey, I'm in charge of personnel. Pete's in charge of the coach and the team on the field. That wasn't said, which leads, and it may be that way, but that leads people to speculate. And then to your point about, okay, we're drafting players. Listen, Should they have drafted offensive lineman? Mo, you were the one advocating for a first round offensive lineman. Looks like that would have been a good call, right? But then the offensive line draft wasn't great. Rube challenged me and said, "Who would you have taken in the second round?" There's only 2 guys that went in the second round, and then the Raiders grabbed 2 of them in the third round. But those players aren't seeing the field. Now, the coaching, the GM, had somebody say on X the other day, well, John Spytek needs to tell Pete Carroll that these guys need to play. Well, you don't do that. That's not how it works. A coach is in charge of what's on the field. Now, are we going to start seeing more young players? Yeah, we better, coming in after the bye week, because what else you got to lose? And it's time to develop and see what you got. But I feel terrible for fans in this situation, Mo, because there's really nothing. There's nothing to get excited about. And I know we do a show on the Raiders, and it's not good for me to say that per se, but I'm always going to be honest and straight up. But I watched that game as an objective third party for our show to cover the Raiders, and I literally started nodding off at points. It was that bad. And I love football, right? So this whole situation, where this team is going, I don't see any evidence of a cohesive plan that everybody's in agreement with.
So I'll peel back the curtain a little bit and get a bit personal here. So as many know, I grew up a Raider fan, right? But emotionally, I've been, I don't want to say detached, but whether the Raiders win by 40, of course the Raiders win by 40, I'm excited. The Raiders lose by 40, though, I'm not upset. And I could say that now because I'm in a different space. You know, I cover the league for a living. This is what I do. So whether the Raiders win or lose, I still have a job to do. But it's not just a job for me. I still, when the Raiders are disappointing and been disappointing for so long, you know, because of course I have Raider fan friends, and still when I watch this team, I'm waiting for them to be the team that I saw when I was a teenager, when I was 15, 16 years old, and they were perennial playoff contenders. They haven't gone to back-to-back playoffs, Scott, since I was a teenager.
Yep.
And even though I'm a writer now and I cover the league professionally, it's still disheartening to see that, and to see this team struggling to find its way no matter what it does. And I saw a lot of Raider fans Sunday night, and this is what kind of struck a chord with me. I saw a lot of Raider fans Sunday night, younger and older, saying, man, I don't know how long I can watch this team just be abysmal. Yeah. Like they're losing their emotional attachment to the team. And I hate to see it, because these people aren't writers. They're not covering the league. They're spending their free time, a lot of them with their families, to watch a football game of a team that brings them together. And you want to see that team win, and you want to see those people happy. And I think that's what struck a chord with me most Sunday night, was hearing and seeing a lot of fans saying, man, I just can't watch the full game anymore. I got to turn it off at halftime. I got to turn it off after the Chiefs scored their second touchdown. I got to turn it off after this point. And not only as a person who grew up a Raider fan, but as a Raider content creator, I guess you want to call me or call us, it's disheartening to hear that, because then, you know, we don't get to hear some of your thoughts, because you probably didn't watch half the game. You're probably not tuning into us and talking to us about how you feel, because I do want to hear the thoughts of Raider Nation, how they feel every week. That's our show. When we do the calls, Scott, that I'll say this, that is my favorite segment, is to communicate and interact with Raider fans on how they feel about the game, win, lose, or tie. And to hear that some people are already feeling apathetic, you know, it strikes a chord with me.
Well, and even fans, even some of our older fans who've been fans for 40, 50, 60 years, right? Mm-hmm. I'm hearing the same. It's like, I just can't anymore. I just, like, you know, you start to get older in life too. You're on the back nine like I am too. You just kind of like, I got to protect my peace, man. And you're right. It's sad to see that, because there's no more loyal fan base than Raider Nation. So when you start to see that, you're like, wow. And that's where the organizational failure fails, not just the guys on the field who are playing for the team, but also the fan base. So it's rough out there. And I do feel for Raider fans, because it's hard to find any silver linings in what's going on, especially when the expectations, you and I thought the expectations were much too high for a lot of fans, which is usual. And we tried to temper those, but even our expectations were wildly optimistic. Now, when you look back at it, 7 or 8 wins, I mean, if there's 3 or 4, I'll be shocked. So we'll see what happens there with the Raiders. What we're going to do is take our first break. When we come back, we're going to talk about John Spytek. We're going to talk about the roster building from last offseason into this offseason. What did he do? What didn't he do? What does the future hold to get this team better? And do you have the people you need in the organization to do that? That's what's coming up next on Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast. Mo and Scott coming right back after this. All right, folks, it's time for me to tell you about our good friends at Sleeper Picks. Of course, they bring you the video here on Silver and Black Today. In the month of October, you only got a few days left. You get a $20 free entry. That's right. Just sign up for Sleeper Picks, play daily fantasy football with us. They're going to give you $20 to try it out. It's amazing. It's a sample. You get it $20 for free. Not only that, deposit up to $100 and Sleeper will match it for the $100 deposit as well. It's $200 for the price of $100. Guess what? Use the code GENTY. That's Genty, only from your friends here at Silver and Black Today, and you get it. Now, I'm going to pick my game for Thursday night. I'm going something different here. I'm going alt picks. Let's look at Justin Herbert. Of course, the Chargers and the Vikings. 200-plus yards is my pick for Justin Herbert. On the Vikings side, will Justin Jefferson get 60-plus yards receiving against the Chargers? You bet your bottom dollar he will. So I got Justin Jefferson 60-plus. Then we're looking also at Ladd McConkey, 40-plus reception yards. I'm going with the 55. I think he's going to have a big game against Minnesota. So let's do that. Let's review my picks here on Sleeper Picks Daily Fantasy Football, the best there ever is. Justin Herbert, 200-plus passing yards. Justin Jefferson, 60-plus yards. And Ladd McConkey, 55.5 yards receiving. There you go. That's my picks. $20 bet. It's going to net me almost $40 on that one. So go get your free $20 entry this month only from Sleeper Picks Daily Fantasy Football and get your $100 deposit matched up to $100 from Sleeper Picks using the code GENTY. And don't forget, rules and regulations apply. Check out the website or the app for details. Not available in every state, but probably in yours. And Sleeper Picks, the Daily Fantasy Football of Silver and Black Today. Come play with me. Let me know how you do, and we'll see you next time. Welcome back. Segment number 2, Silver and Black Today on this Tuesday. Welcome back to Raider Nation. Hope you are doing well other than thinking about your football team. We are talking about your football team. And don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you get it, wherever you get your audio, that is. Also, don't forget, rate and review. That helps us very much. If you're watching us on video, we appreciate the sub and the thumbs up and the bell notification. Ring that bell. We always appreciate it. Scott and Mo, we're back talking about the Raiders. And Mo, I wanted to use this segment to jump in because while game day and right after game day, it's very easy to go off on the coaches, especially when Chip Kelly's offense hasn't been very imaginative, nor has it gone downfield. The chart of Geno Smith, I'm not even going to go nuts on Geno Smith because we know what that's at. But the chart of Geno Smith's passing during that game was unbelievable. There was 3 passes, I think, past the line of scrimmage, 4 passes past the line of scrimmage. Seriously, past the line of scrimmage. And he's making $40 million. So not all his fault, but partly his fault. So you look at that, you see Chip Kelly's inability to get that offense going, to use any imagination. So all the story, all the hate that was hurled upon Kelly when he was hired, I liked the hire. Turns out I was wrong so far. Has really come home to roost. But next is the John Spytek stuff. Why didn't we this? Why didn't we that? I hear from fans. And that's where I want to start because John Spytek, we've talked about it on this show. What didn't he do during the offseason? He had money, yes. What did he do in the draft? We know. Could he have done something differently in the first round? Absolutely. He did not. He chose Ashton Genty. Fine. I advocated for that. Second round, he gets a wide receiver. And then third round, he waits. So he gets his 2 offensive linemen. In free agency, it wasn't a great overall free agent year at the biggest points of need, Mo, offensive line and in the defensive backfield, but he didn't do anything there. In fact, with the defensive backfield, we really thought they'd be more active there. When you look at the way that John Spytek so far, knowing what we know about him, right, which is to develop young talent, build through the draft, when fans are mad right now at John Spytek for what happened in the last offseason, give me a counterpoint here. For those fans that are mad at John Spytek and think he should already be fired, what evidence do they have to support that argument? And then on the other side, defend him a little bit.
Where I can agree with the fans that John Spytek didn't do enough, I don't think he should be fired. I'm not firing a GM halfway into the season. But where I would be upset with John Spytek is you had all of this cap space. You don't want to pay Jacoby Myers, but you're holding on to this cap space for what? Like,
Yeah.
where's the move coming? Like, usually, even rebuilding teams in the first year, if they make at least I don't want to say a splashy move because that doesn't have to be splashy, but you invest in weak spots on your roster. What are you holding on to the financial resources for?
Right.
I mean, if the message from Pete Carroll was to win, you should have spent a little more money in free agency. And I'm
Right,
not
because
talking about. Go ahead.
some of those contracts, when you sign these guys, I'm not talking about a long-term free agent sign. I'm talking some of these other guys who are looking for a chance somewhere, that are being jettisoned from their old team. You can give them a 3-year deal where really only a year is guaranteed.
Scott, if your most notable signings are Alex Kappa and Jamal Adams,
Yeah.
and no offense to Landon Roberts, he's a solid linebacker, but if those are your most notable free agent signings, then you're not planning to win
Yeah,
much
there you
in
go.
the upcoming season. Not to say the Raiders had to win free agency, because we all know a lot of times teams that win free agency don't win much in the regular season, but at least address some clear holes in your roster. How many times have we talked about Darnay Holmes in the slot cornerback position? I know they wanted to move Jeremy Chin over, but invest in a slot cornerback. There were plenty available. Invest in an actual starting cornerback because Kyle Blue Kelly's not a starter. Invest in an actual backup left tackle because Stone Forsythe is not it. There are a bunch of moves that they could have made that didn't have to be splashy moves, but just moves to fill needs. And I think Spytek dropped the ball in free agency. While defense Spytek is, he did bring in, again, an 11-man rookie draft class. He brought in that draft class with his scouts. But it is up to the coaching staff to play those guys. So Spytek, while he can mandate, oh, you have to, he can't really go in there. Now, he can, but he's trusting Pete Carroll and that staff to make the right decisions on game day with the active roster. But he did bring in a big rookie class, but it's up to the coaching staff to play those rookies, and John Spytek doesn't have full autonomy over that and who plays.
But that's, to me, Mo, some of the disconnect here, right? Which is you bring in a young GM, and listen, I understand they went after Ben Johnson, even though Ben Johnson was never serious about the Raiders. They went after some young coaches. But you bring in a young GM who has to look long term. I'm talking 5 years down the road. That's part of his job, but also to rebuild. I shouldn't say rebuild. This team has not been real good since 2016. So you look at this team and you say, okay, so we got the young GM, and then we're going to go get the oldest coach in the NFL. Now, I thought that Pete Carroll was a good fallback plan, no question. We all did. But it just seems like if the plan is to go and tear this thing down to the studs, basically, then the acquisition of Geno Smith and Pete Carroll make no sense. And so to me, it seems like that's what's happened here is there was conflicting views or conflicting goals from the leadership, one on the field, the other in the front office, on where this team should go. The quote from Pete Carroll about how he's going to win more games than people think, and he didn't care what people thought about that, is haunting because it's not even close. Meanwhile, you have two offensive linemen that have never been active that were drafted, and they might be projects. That's fine. But how do you get them? How do you even get them out? They can't do worse than what we're seeing out there now, or maybe they could, but you don't know that until you activate them. Then you see the Jackson Powers Johnson stuff. The only guy who gets benched. Alex Kappa looked like crap. You had Forsythe again. It's just, I don't understand it, dude. Explain it to me how one guy gets punished, but the whole unit stinks.
This was my back and forth because there were some people on Twitter that said, well, JPJ wasn't playing well. And my counter to that was,
Who
well, how
was?
many guys who exactly was playing great
Right.
against the Chiefs? And then why was Alex Kappa per se singled out? Now Geno Smith eventually went to the bench, but at the time the game was over.
Yeah.
The Chiefs had put in Gardner Minshew, and at that time, basically the Raiders are waving the white flag. Why is it that JPJ is singled out? I can name people was saying, well, again, he didn't play well. I can name two people that should have probably lost their job weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And we talk about this frequently on the show. There are guys that should have lost their jobs weeks ago, but their job security, as far as we know, Scott, is secure.
They've been playing 100% of the snaps or most of the snaps, 90+% of the snaps. Why is it that JPJ is entering the season in the competition and he's one of the first guys to get benched? And by the way, JPJ has had some good games this season at guard.
Yes.
If you look at, I think it was Mark John of Tape Don't Lie reposted JPJ's win block rate, right? And it was top 10.
Yeah.
So it apparently the JPJ at guard was working, but the minute things go sideways, oh, JPJ's got to hit the bench. Why? That sounds like a personal beef to me, Scott.
And that's what we thought weeks ago when this all went down, right? We said it was personal. In fact, it's our most watched show here on YouTube this season. And
We have
you
the
look,
numbers.
yeah, and you look at it, and it's so beyond the pale. It's almost like harassment, like bullying. I mean, I hate to use that for such a big dude and an adult man who's making good money, but that's what it seems to me because, like you said, there's guys on that line should have lost their job. Who on the offense played well yesterday? You should have benched every single friggin' starter. I mean, nobody did anything. So this is where the coaching, where people want to fire coaches and all that stuff. You don't fire coaches now, but I'm telling you, there's something is not right. Something is completely off with what's happening on the field and what's happening in the front office. It's called dysfunction. I had one of our great listeners, and I won't name the person just to call him out, but who told me a few weeks ago we had a show title about dysfunction. It's not dysfunctional. What? It's even more dysfunctional now. It's going so far. The Raiders are not just a bad NFL team, and I hate to tell Raider Nation this, but you're going to have to swallow it. And that is, they are a freaking laughingstock. You look at that Chiefs game and what happened, and what's happened, and then the press conferences where Pete Carroll asked on Monday, might there be more personnel changes coming up? Yeah, well, those competitions are ongoing. What competitions? Like you said, the only person who ever gets benched is JPJ. So I don't understand where's these competitions, and aren't you supposed to do that in camp? Now, you have a player struggling. There's been no competition at quarterback, right? Where Geno Smith's getting hammered. He has no confidence. He has no faith in that offensive line, and you can tell. It's just a mess, Mo, and we can sit here and bitch about it all day long, but there's got to be some organizational coming together during this bye week, and they got to come out of it. Whether they win a game or not, doesn't matter. But you got to start to see some progress here, some decision making, some semblance of a direction from this franchise moving forward with the rest of the season.
One thing that has to happen during this bye week, during this off time is, and I said this on Twitter, John Spytek has to appear publicly and talk about this mess. Because whether you blame him or not, he doesn't just hand off the draft class and just go into the shadows. He has to answer. He's the GM.
Right.
He's the roster builder, short and long term for this roster. He should appear publicly and talk about what the Raiders are going through now and how they're going to go about at least improving it or developing some of the players that he drafted.
Yeah.
I don't know if that comes after he has a long talk with Pete Carroll, because I believe Pete Carroll came out and shouts are around the shield who posted this. Pete Carroll came out and said that, yeah, we're playing young players. And that couldn't be the biggest lie ever told to Raider Nation. Yeah, we're playing young players. So where's Darian Porter? Where are the two offensive linemen that you drafted in the third round? Where's Tonka Hemingway? Where's JJ Pegues? Where are these guys? Because as you said, it can't be any worse. But even if it can be, at least those guys are learning and could get better.
Correct.
Versus Jamal Adams, who's about 30 years old and at the end of his career, versus Alex Kappa, who's coming off his worst season and still not a good offensive lineman. We've seen enough of those guys. Bring in the young guys because the ceiling, the upside could be untapped. And you could have a much better player down the line if those guys get their early snaps in their careers. Why are you holding out Darian Porter when we can clearly see, and I hate to pick on him, we can clearly see Kyle Blue Kelly is getting torched every time. He's one of the worst cornerbacks in the league. And you got Isaiah a third rounder sitting there.
Isaiah Palomo. I know Raider fans love him. Holy crap, he's bad. He's been brutal. He had some moments last year, but he's fallen off. Now, he might be playing in the wrong position.
He is.
Right? He's playing the wrong position, so that's not all his fault. But again, that's a coaching decision to both play him and play him in that spot. just shows there's a lack of not creating a system where your player is playing where they could be successful versus making them play in a system because you want to play that system.
Paul Miles not a free safety.
No,
he
not even
and
close.
he should be your hybrid linebacker safety type, which is what
Correct.
Jamal Adams is playing right now. He should be your hybrid, closer to the line of scrimmage. He's not a free safety. But they're gonna get, I would assume they're gonna get Lonnie Johnson Jr. back. That's not gonna fix everything on the back end because Lonnie Johnson Jr. has been pretty much a backup his entire career. You know, bless him. He loves being a Raider. If you look at his Twitter handle, and it's great. But the Raiders need to stop. Well, Pete Carroll needs to stop kidding himself and saying these things that are clearly not true and covering for the players that he likes and benching the players that maybe Chip Kelly is not too fond of, because that's another part of this is that Chip Kelly's running the offense. So Chip Kelly could have a lot of sway in what's going on with JPJ and Alex Kappa in that guard position. So I wouldn't absolve Chip Kelly of that.
Nope.
But they need to stop playing favorites and start playing some young guys and rookies because the Raiders aren't going anywhere this year. It's time to develop. It's time to start the youth movement.
And that's what I mean about this meeting of the minds, come to Jesus meeting, whatever you want to call it, that this organization, John Spytek, has to have with this coaching staff to say, listen, guys, we tried your way. We're now 2-5, and it's going really backward. So while he can't dictate exactly who plays and when, he can say, look, we need to switch strategy here. It's not about winning this year. It's about finding out what we have so that we can go into the offseason and continue to plug holes and build. So if we're going to do that, you guys need to start thinking about who's going to play so that we can see what they can do. Right, to your point. Got to play those young players. If it doesn't happen, it's not a good sign. It'll be a brutal sign for the entire organization. And Mo, a lot of people, I'm sure just like you, the messages people we interact with online, I'm already looking forward to the draft. And Murph, Murph was going off the last two post-game shows about the Raiders going out and getting a quarterback. You and I have been harping on that, as has he, for years. The problem is, I wouldn't bring a quarterback into this organization. What are they going to do? You could draft a first-round draft pick. Would they be successful in an organization run like this, with a coaching staff like this, with a GM and a coach who might not be on the same page? No. So that's why this organization has to decide what it's going to be, where it wants to go. And you brought up the idea that, well, maybe Pete Carroll is one and done in Las Vegas. And I think about future development of players. If the Raiders were to go out and get a quarterback next year in the draft in 2026, I don't think you can bring him in with Pete Carroll. That's the whole point about having this older coach, not about his age per se, but about a guy who's not going to be there to see it's the Moses effect, I call it, right? You're supposed to bring people along. Moses never got to the promised land. Pete Carroll's never going to see the promised land with the Raiders, ever. So if that's the case, why are you keeping him around? You got to go take a chance on a young coach and find out what they can do and give them a quarterback that they can develop without the pressure of saying you got to win within 2 years or you're fired.
So I said this on Sunday. I said the Raiders have to look at this now long-term. If you're not part of the long-term plan, you got to go.
Yes.
So that means players on expiring contracts, older veterans. If that person is not part of the long-term plan, you can trade them. If you trade him, if you can. And yes, that includes Jacoby Myers, who didn't suit up because of knee and toe injuries. If he's not part of the long-term plan, if you're not going to pay him, trade him. I would sit down with Max Crosby and say, look, Max, I know Raider Nation doesn't want to hear this, but I would sit down with Max Crosby and say, hey, Max, this is what we're going to do. We're going to play a lot of young guys. We're going to develop for the future. We're probably not going to win a lot of games going forward. But the hope is that developing these young guys will get us better for 2026 and beyond. Are you on board with that? And if he isn't, you trade him. Right. If he's like, okay, fine. All right, we'll build around that. We'll have Max Crosby as the leader in the locker room. Because as we've seen the Patriots do, right? Every year we see these teams do this. They're able to turn it around within a year with a young quarterback or a rookie quarterback. They're able to turn it around. I know it doesn't seem like a reality for Raider Nation, but it happens literally almost just about, I think, every year. Yeah. So I wouldn't trade necessarily Max Crosby, non-negotiable, but if he's not on board with the developmental plan that we have for the remainder of the year and he doesn't see his future with the team, then you got to do what you got to do. But if he's okay with that, you keep Max Crosby, you develop your young players, and you add on next year in free agency and the draft, and you hope that you in 2026 you can finally turn it around and make a leap.
Right. And that's the thing. People, when they talk about Max Crosby, and I totally understand this, right? Which is, yeah, get rid of him so he can, he deserves better. And I totally get that and understand it and don't disagree with it per se. At the same time, Max Crosby may want to stay. I know he wants to win, all that kind of stuff. But yes, you need to look at this from a long-term future. And Raider fans, to Mo's point, there's players you love and you'd hate to see them go. But if it's not going to help you 3 years down the road or 4 years down the road, and you don't see them in the picture, including the coach, then it's time to move on after the season. Because what they're doing now, this experiment with Pete Carroll, and listen, I still respect Pete Carroll for what he's done. Don't get me wrong, but what he's doing now is not working. Not and again, I'm really concerned because a coach of his tenure, the excuses are overwhelming. Because in this press conference Monday, excuse about this player being out, about that player being out, about this player being out. Yes, true. When you're missing Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, and then Max Crosby gets, I understand that's a lot, but every team deals with injuries. Okay? So let's slow the roll on that. And Raider Nation is tired of excuses too, by the way. Just are. But now when for those of you out there who say, why don't the Raiders get more respect? They deserve more respect. They don't. They're a joke. You got to face it. And they got to change it. And it takes hard moves to change it. All right. Go ahead, Mo. You got one more thing?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I don't want to hear any excuses about injuries. I've seen teams with all sorts of injuries at least score points. The Raiders didn't score any points yesterday. There's one thing to have a rough day because of key injuries. It's another thing to not score any points. And oh, by the way, when Max Crosby and Jacoby Myers were out there against the Colts not too long ago, they only scored 6 points. As I said, Scott, at the beginning of the show, 3 games this season where they didn't score a touchdown. And 2 of those games, Max Crosby and Jacoby Myers were fully healthy. So I don't want to hear excuses about injuries. The Raiders have been just as bad with them as they were without them. Max Crosby for a half against the Chiefs.
A half. Right. And not only that, but Raider fans will hate to hear this, but look at the 49ers. They were winning with Mac Jones. Remember him? Mac Jones. All those injuries the 49ers have on defense as well.
No Fred Warner, no Nick Bosa.
And they score points. So there you go. Right. Exactly. Oy vey. Okay. We're going to take our final break. When we come back, we're going to get to your phone calls on the Raider Nation switchboard. You're with Mo and Scott. We're coming right back. Welcome back. Home stretch here on Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports Original podcast. Do us a favor, subscribe wherever you get your audio. Don't forget to rate and review. Mr. Mo Moton, Mr. Scott Gulbransen, we are waiting for your calls now. Mo, I kid you not, we can't get them all on. We had 54 calls. 54. I did some back of the matchbook math. It would take us 6.5 hours to get through those calls. So, with all due respect to everybody, keep calling in. I tried to take a mix of calls here, but we can't get to them all. So keep calling. By the way, Mo, I'm sure you saw a little bit of it in Murph's clip on X. The drop-ins with the viewers have been great on the post game. And we had some really good ones on Sunday, and we'll continue to do that. Obviously, this week is a bye week, so we won't have any. But we're going to get to your calls now. We got some interesting locations. You ready for this? We're starting off our journey on the Raider Nation switchboard with 2 straight callers from Denver. Yes, go figure. Denver, the site of an amazing comeback. Was that in Denver? Yeah, it was.
Yes, that was in Denver. Mm-hmm.
Remember Bo Nix? He sucks. Yeah, I remember that. I'm old enough to remember when I said Bo Nix would be a good draft pick. And I'm old enough to remember when I said Drake May. Oh, they suck. Okay. Now, they don't suck as bad as Geno Smith, but that's beside the point. All right. Let's go out to Blake in Denver. Here's Blake in Denver.
Scott, Mo, Blake from Denver. I had to get on the phone. It's the second quarter of the Chiefs-Raider game. Anyway, there was a lot of optimism coming into this week because of that Titans win. It was fool's gold. It was a mirage.
Mirage.
We are just, the Chiefs are the cream of the crop, and this just shows how far down the Raiders really are. Everywhere, every position across the board, depth, offensive line, receiver. I know we're without Bowers and Myers, but I really just don't think it would have made a difference. The defense plays tough at first, but they can't keep up, especially when the offense isn't producing anything. Geno needs to, unfortunately, be benched. There's so much going on in my head, but it's just another disappointing season.
In the second quarter.
Which sucks. We still got to give Pete Carroll. I'm a Pete Carroll guy from the USC days. We got to give him his multiple years. We can't keep changing regimes on the coaching staff and GM. We need stability. It's second quarter. There was just a sack by Adams. Hopefully they can turn it around, but it's not looking good. All right, boys. Talk to you later. Bye.
There's Blake at Denver just bringing in his Nostradamus in the second quarter. Maybe they can turn around, but it doesn't look good. Yeah, you were right. By the way, go Irish. They beat USC. And Pete Carroll, I understand what he's saying about stability, Mo. The Raiders firing coaches all the time. But I don't think you don't have stability with Pete Carroll. Past 2 years, maybe if you were lucky and you were doing well, 3. But not with what you're seeing this year. How much of this is a lack of talent? Because you and I both were at 7 or 8 wins. How much of this is talent? How much is the coaching?
I'd say it's 50-50. The Raiders don't have, we talked about the depth issue that the Raiders have right now. That's part of the problem, having Kai Bukele out there as your second best cornerback. That's a talent issue, right? The coaching issue comes in when Kai Bukele gets toasted for weeks and you leave him out there. So that's why I say it's a perfect 50-50 combination. You don't have the talent, and the talent that's out there that's underperforming, you leave them out there. When you see a player struggling, not just for a game, but for weeks, you bench him. You start a younger player. You start a rookie that you drafted, by the way, in the 3rd round, Scott. 3rd round rookie. This is not some 7th round pick. 3rd rounder. You start him. And that's the coaching problem. I think this coaching staff is a little too stubborn and stuck in its ways. And I'm talking about Pete Carroll and
Hold
Chip
on, Mo,
Kelly
if you
directly.
can hear me. Pride is one of the deadly sins, my man. Right? So got some guys that are a little too prideful out there, in my view. And then you have talent who are not improving, especially the young guys, and making mistakes. That's the other thing, Mo. I cannot believe the number of mistakes when you watch the All-22 that this Raider team makes, including veterans. Like, what is going on? Because I criticized Antonio Pierce heavily last year for this team being unprepared and undisciplined, and this team is worse. It's crazy. All right. Staying in Denver. We're staying at Mile High. Here is Raider Eddie.
Hey, guys. What's up? I love the show. This is Raider Eddie in Denver. I want to ask you about the offensive line, and I want to ask you about these 2 third-round linemen that we picked up in the draft recently, Grant, and I believe the other guy is named Rogers, if I'm not mistaken, the guard. Guys, it's fairly common for a 3rd-round guard to be able to start pretty early in his career, if I'm not mistaken. Tell me if I'm wrong on that. So, given the state of our guard play, I don't understand what's going on there. Do you think that Spytek and maybe even Brady are frustrated with his coaching staff for not developing these offensive linemen that we drafted and giving them a chance to play sooner rather than later? Do you think they would talk to these coaches and say, you know what, you've got to be more flexible and it's time to make this happen? I really hope that we see these guys playing after the Chiefs game and after the bye, one way or the other. If we get a win, or even if we lose to the Chiefs, I want to see that happen because I want to know if these guys can play or not. And guys, that's pretty much all I have. I'm just going to drop one more thing. Guys, the goal line play that we had last week to Alex Kappa, the little trick play with the pass, I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's Chip Kelly being ultra rigid, ultra stubborn, ultra egotistical. There's no coincidence that he went to Alex Kappa. He knows what people are saying. He knows that people are writing that guy off. He's not a good guard. JPJ is, and these guys have fumbled so many these types of issues. But anyway, guys, I love the show. Let's go Raiders.
Wow, Raider Eddie picking up on that. I didn't put those two together last week when it happened. Damn. But let's get back to go ahead.
It's a good observation, though.
It's a very good observation. That's why I'm shocked. Good stuff, Raider Eddie in Denver. All right, Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant. We know Caleb Rogers, Texas Tech. Of course, Charles Grant out of William and Mary. These guys, you could say, if you look back at their draft profiles, they talk about them as maybe not being NFL starter ready, which may be true. Okay, that may come to pass. But the fact that they haven't been active, especially with the troubles that the Raiders have had through 7 weeks now up front, talk about that. Talk about why, other than the rigidity that you've already mentioned, Mo, why these two guys haven't seen the field.
It's, I hate to speculate, but I just feel like there's a lot of favoritism going on with the Raiders, and they have to get through that. Put the ego aside and just look at, if you've been watching the games, as Raider Eddie said, the guard play hasn't been good. Dylan Parham's had a good game here and there, but hasn't looked like the starting caliber player we saw last year when he was on the right side. JPJ, in my opinion, is their best guard, and they benched him. Alex Kappa, in my opinion, at this point in his career, is not a starting guard. And kudos to Raider Eddie for pointing out the point that, yeah, he went to Alex Kappa to try to prove a point on that trick play near the goal line. But even with the line play that you have, obviously you thought enough of Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant to draft them in the third round. You're right, Raider Eddie. A lot of third round, not just guards, offensive linemen, a lot of third round rookies see the field within the first year. Some of them start.
Some of them
week
start,
one. Yeah. You're drafting someone in the third round, you think fairly high of them, right? You're thinking that there's some upside there. The dart throws and the long shots are your 6th, 7th round picks, your 5th round picks. You're like, if they play, who knows? But a third round pick, you're thinking that guy could eventually turn into a starter and could play early with a legit camp competition. Now, I feel like the Raiders haven't had legit camp competitions. I think Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly have been very selective about who competes for their job and who doesn't have and who has job security. And I think that's a hurdle that they have to get over in order for the Raiders to see development. There's no reason why Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant shouldn't both be at least active. Caleb Rogers has been inactive.
Yeah.
He should at least be active for game day, especially if you're in games like yesterday, Sunday, when there was a blowout, you can have your rookies play.
Right. And you had yesterday, too, Tonka Hemingway again inactive. He's a 4th rounder, to your point. Max Crosby was a 4th rounder. I'm not saying Tonka Hemingway is as good as Max Crosby was coming out of college. I'm just saying, though, you had Butler was already inactive as well. So you knew you were down a defensive lineman. Why don't you throw in the young guy and see what happens? Yes, it's against the Chiefs. I understand that. But even better, see how he does against better competition. I don't get it. Makes no sense to me. But there you go. All right. Eddie in Denver. Thanks so much. All right. Let's go to our buddy Anders in Oakland, our old friend.
Hey, Scott and Mo. This is Anthony.
Wrong call. Anthony in Sacramento.
Man, this is a post-Chiefs game. Sunday night, sorry. Man, obviously that you can say this game was just terrible. Again, another terrible game to look at. We 3 first downs, only 95 total offensive yards, I think it is. Where do you guys go? Where do we go? Where do we go from here? I mean, like I said, I think before, a few weeks ago, I think it's still too early to talk about firings. I'm not calling for anyone's job or anything like that. But, man, Geno looks bad. The offensive line looks bad. The secondary looks bad. Everything looks bad. I mean, hopefully Max is okay. I thought Anna Button went down. Hopefully he's okay. Man, it feels like it's too early to talk about the draft, but at this point, it's like, where do we go? Are we looking at 2 quarterbacks in the draft? Myself, I was looking at, obviously Nussmeier. I think his name is Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. I was looking at Jalen Daniels from Kansas. probably not standouts or anything like that, but I mean, do you go heavy as far as like offensive line, defensive line?
All
What
of
are we
that.
doing? You know, like, what are we doing? It seems like the rookies are still not really, I mean, obviously late in garbage time, there looks like they got some chances there, but how do we bounce back? I mean, we got a bye week, so hopefully we get some type of juice with this team. All right, guys, I'm hope to hear from you. Thanks.
Yeah. Anthony in Sacramento. There's me mislabeling the calls after having to watch that game on Sunday. But Mo, I don't think there is any bouncing back this year. I think bouncing back this year, if I can define it, would be exactly what you were saying earlier. Play young players, see what you got. And hopefully for Raider Nation, you see some performances that guy's got it. That guy, meh, because not everybody's going to pan out. But play what you have, the young players, see what they're able to do. Because if you're going to lose with players who are going to be around for a while, or it at least gives you insight into what other needs you have, what kind of depth you could have with some of the draft picks you got this year that haven't seen the field yet.
So that's Anthony from Sacramento, right? Am I correct
That's
on that?
correct.
Anthony from Sacramento, I'm going to use your word juice. That's what you're hoping for out of the bye. And I think I said this last week that usually when teams make changes, and I'm not talking about firings, and Anthony said he's not, advocating firing people, because I don't think it's going to happen. You're not going to fire Pete Carroll halfway into the year. Pete Carroll, the accomplished head coach he is, that's not how you do business in the NFL. You're not going to fire him like that. You're not going to fire your OC, who's the highest paid OC, halfway into the season either, because teams aren't going to admit their mistakes that early. But what you're hoping to see out of the bye, and I'm probably saying this for the 100th time, is younger players on the field. If I see Alex Cappa starting against the Jaguars in week 9, I'm going to lose my mind. If I see Kyu Blue Kelly out there starting against the Jaguars in week 9, I'm going to lose my mind. Those two in particular, going to lose my mind. I can use another word, but I'm trying to keep it, family friendly here.
Your
but
excrement, yes.
They're exactly. Those guys shouldn't be on the field week 9. Darian Porter should be on the field. JPJ should be on the field. Caleb Rogers should be active. Charles Grant should be active and or on the field over Stone Forsythe as a backup because Colt Miller's out. That's the only way you're going to find a spark. That is the only, I shouldn't say the only, but one of the reasons you're watching the Raiders for the second half of the season is to see development because the wins aren't coming. Pete Carroll said we're trying to win and rebuild. Well, the Raiders ain't winning. They're barely scoring touchdowns. So look forward to the development. Look forward to the long-term future. Look forward to seeing some of these young guys on the field. Hopefully the Raiders coaches get their head out of their rectums and start playing favorites and start getting some young guys some playing time.
Absolutely. Well said, my friend. All right. We'll move away from heads up rectums and we'll go to our next call, who hopefully doesn't have his head where it's
Hey, it's Zach from Maine. Appreciate you guys doing the show. I guess I got a quick question. Well, I guess first of all, I want to address the elephant in the room. We all know it's time to give Derek Carr a call.
Oh, no.
I'm just kidding. But I'm genuinely curious, is Pete Carroll gone? This has been just absolutely atrocious. And I just feel like we're in a little bit of a never-ending cycle of not really committing to a coach and a GM duo. And are we just going to keep doing this? You give him a year and then we fire him. So appreciate you guys. Thank you, and look forward to hearing the show. Bye.
Zach in Maine, the most northern of the contiguous states. Maine. I think Maine is, it's further north than Washington. There you go. Appreciate the call, man. Mo, that's a good question, though, because I do see the very distinct possibility that Pete Carroll would be gone after this year, done very respectfully, to your point. It's actually something some of the callers on Sunday talked about on video drop-ins about you don't unceremoniously fire Pete Carroll. Like, it doesn't happen. Right. That sends a bad signal around the NFL and to other coaching candidates.
Right.
So if I see Pete Carroll gone, Mo, if this after the bye, the rest of the season, you don't see a commitment to young players and then see players develop. If you see players develop under Pete Carroll and the rest of the coaching staff, and you're getting some good performances and some progress, then I think there's a distinct possibility he could be back for year 2. if it continues like it is, young players or not, especially if you play young players and there's no improvement, you're not seeing week to week things get better, then I could see him gone. What do you say?
So I'm gonna tap into my Anders out in Oakland, I believe it is. I'm gonna be Anders for a minute and talk about just operations and how you handle things in the corporate world. Not that the NFL is the corporate world, but in business in general, and specifically to Pete Carroll, right? So when Pete Carroll was moved out of his head coaching spot position in Seattle, they didn't fire him.
Right.
They moved him to the front office, to a front office role, and then he eventually, left the organization, started teaching classes at USC, but they didn't outright fire Pete Carroll. And you're probably asking, why not just fire him? When you've accomplished as much as Pete Carroll's accomplished, as you just said, Scott, and as people pointed out with you and Murph from the postgame show, you don't just fire a guy like that, because again, it sends a bad message to other NFL teams and other accomplished NFL coaches. Oh, that's how they're going to handle Pete Carroll, an accomplished head coach. I know he isn't doing a good job right now, but still, you respect the resume. You don't just fire a guy like that. And I think to the caller, the way it happens is usually, and in this case, the way I can see it happening is they say Pete Carroll and the Raiders go their separate ways, right? You hear that a lot. Oh, the two sides decided to go their separate ways.
Yeah.
Just to save face for Pete Carroll. And then they're not firing him after 1 year, because how embarrassing would that be for Pete Carroll with all that he's accomplished? Oh, they're going their separate ways. They agreed to mutually part ways. I think that's how it's usually phrased in the corporate world. And in the NFL too, you hear that. Mutually agreed to part ways. So I can see that happening, as you said, Scott, if there's not development from some of these young players, because John Spytek's got to be feeling impatient, saying, look, I brought in this big draft class, and you're not doing anything to develop them.
Yep, absolutely. Good call. Appreciate it, Zach, up in Maine.
Hey, Scott and Mo, this is the answer.
Oh, wrong. I'm hitting the buttons. Look at me. Yes, I'm being coached by Chip Kelly. All right. Here we go. Here's Josh out in California.
Hey, Scott, Mo, this is Josh from the Central Valley in California. Well, the boat race is commencing as we speak. It is 21-0 going to the half, and this has someone's getting fired or benched written all over it. I really do not understand how come we haven't benched Geno. They have a total of 17 first downs, and we barely have 13 offensive plays. This is bad. It's bad, and as a Raider fan, who's been through bad times, I think this is the worst I've ever seen this team, and I've been through some bad time, Andrew Walter type of years, and so it's disheartening to see like my favorite franchises just suck year in, year out. See my beloved Oakland A's go to Sacramento, but they have promising young talent coming up. But the Raiders just year in, year out, can't count on those guys. I just want to know, again, I keep bringing up the question, like, why haven't they benched them? You're loyal to a fault. Speaking about Pete Carroll to Geno Smith. And so, I mean, at some point, you got to save your team. I firmly believe he's lost his team right now if he doesn't make the change. So, you guys stay blessed. You guys have a good weekend. All right, thanks.
Josh out in California, thanks, man. Yeah, and Mo, this is something you said, the coaching hubris, right? In the fact that they're rigid. They won't go against their decision. And with Geno Smith, look, Geno Smith is also playing behind a terrible offensive line. I'm not making excuses for his own mistakes, because he's got plenty of them, but it's a bad situation. On the postgame show, the other Murph, Jeff Murphy, came in, dropped in our show. He's one of the group of five guys, and he's a college quarterback. And I asked him about Geno Smith, and he said, you can see it in his face that he's shell-shocked. Like, he expected something different. He obviously heard what Pete Carroll said and what they sold him. And then he got here. Now he owns it. I think he's making too many excuses too, but it's just a whole cauldron, since we're almost at Halloween. It's a whole cauldron of what you referenced earlier that comes out of the backside of a bull.
I'll say this, Scott. I can't top that, but I'll say this, Scott. The loyal to a fault thing sticks with me because Dana OG on Twitter told me this weeks ago that Pete Carroll, while he is loyal to players, could be loyal to a fault. And I think that's what we're seeing with Geno Smith. Geno Smith has 67 passing yards. What did I say last week, Scott? I said the Raiders won't be able to compete with the Chiefs dinking and dunking down the field. Geno Smith had 4 completions past the line of scrimmage, I believe. 4 of his 10 completions were beyond the line of scrimmage. 67 passing yards. The only quarterback worse than Geno Smith on Sunday was probably Justin Fields, and he got benched at halftime.
Yeah. No, and it's, I would say that even our good friend Evan Grote, who played high school in football, and I think Evan's like 5'6", 5'7", he could have completed more passes downfield than Geno Smith yesterday. Just saying.
Shout out to Evan.
Right. That's right. I wanted to give him a shout out. But yeah, I mean, it's the loyalty to a fault. Absolutely. You can see it. Everybody can see it. But Pete Carroll keeps doubling down. So we'll see. Good call, man. We appreciate it. All right. It's Pastor Mike time.
Scott, Mo, Pastor Mike behind bars. Well, boys, yeah, rough one today. Can I just tell you, in my opinion, I know we lack talent. I know there's lots of things we lack, but in my opinion, the way this team came out today and the way they played against the Chiefs, this is all on coaching. And in the post-game presser where Pete said he didn't see that coming, that's even more concerning. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how long Pete, is going to, last. But I think someone needs to get fired. Somebody does. And maybe that's Chip Kelly. Maybe he's the fall guy. I'm not sure. But, I am so frustrated about what I saw today and the lack of fire. It was ridiculous. And so I've decided, because I'm a season ticket holder, and I've decided I'm selling the rest of my tickets.
Wow.
And every chance I get, I'm going to sell them to opposing team fans.
Whoa.
To make a statement to the Raiders, whether they see it or not, I don't know. I'm going to email my rep, going to give them my 2 cents, and let the organization know how I feel about this. Because, man, I tell you what, I spend thousands of dollars every year to go to games. And I'm not doing it anymore to see this product on the field. I can't do it. I just can't do it this year. So anyway, bye week coming up. That's a good thing. I'll be in Cabo San Lucas enjoying the sun. You guys have a good one. Raiders.
There's Pastor Mike behind bars. He's a pastor, a man of God, and he's selling his tickets to visiting fans. That's where we're at, Mo.
When Pastor Mike got on the call, based on his voice tone, I know he was going to say something that was he had some intentions on his mind when he got on the call.
Yes.
But this is exactly what I talked about in the first segment, Scott. What I said struck a chord with me Sunday night. Season ticket holders and longtime Raider fans like Pastor Mike are fed up and they're apathetic, not watching full games, or in his case, Pastor Mike's case, now selling tickets to opposing fans. This is where we are, Scott. And I'm not going to tell Pastor Mike what he should do with his tickets. He's a fan. I don't tell any fan how they fan. I don't tell fans what they should do, what they should do with their tickets, how they should watch, when they should watch, how much of the game they should watch. You're a fan of your team. You do what you want. Because I know people are going to criticize Pastor Mike for this, but this is his way of protesting the garbage that we're seeing on the field. And it's appropriate to call it garbage when a team goes out there. I don't care how many players you have injured, scoring 0 points against a division rival. And as he said, not showing much fight. I know Max Crosby didn't play the second half, but what were the Raiders doing in the first half when Max Crosby was on the field? Much of nothing, right? So if you're a Raider fan out there, I'm not telling you to sell your tickets, and I'm not telling you to sell your tickets to opposing fans. But if you're apathetic, if you're emotionally detached, if you're betting against the Raiders, I know there's some people out there who do that too. Say, look, if I'm going to sit here through this crap show, I'm going to make some money off of it. I totally understand it. Sure. I totally get it. So
because they're invested, because today in the NFL, Mo, as you know this, I mean, I'm preaching to you as a choir here, but it's not just your money buying tickets. It's an investment. You're buying a PSL. Okay. Mm-hmm. You have to pay a fee just to pay the fee. Then you have to buy the tickets, which go up every year. So you're making a significant personal finance investment in this franchise. It's not picking up tickets from the dude outside the stadium every once in a while. It's an investment. So I understand. And you're right. I'm not going to tell him not to sell his tickets to visit. He sells his tickets who he wants. I have a good friend who has great seats there who does it often because he's got a house in Vegas. He lives elsewhere, sells his tickets when he's not there, and he doesn't really care. He tries to sell them to Raider fans, but now I doubt he'll sell them to Raider fans because who would want that misery? But nonetheless, and calling it garbage, by the way, is a compliment. Again, 6 points in the last 2 weeks in the NFL.
20.
Rough sledding for everybody out there. All right, Pastor Mike, thank you again for all you do. We appreciate it. All right, here's Raider Jay in California. Last call for the day. Here he is.
Mo, this is Raider Jay calling from the Cali. Man, just about the second half in this Raider Chiefs game, and I just have never been so angry. It's just so hard to watch, and it just seems every year it's the same thing. It doesn't matter what coach we have, what staff we have. I mean, it is literally painful watching this game, and I'm just about to turn it off. They're 3 touchdowns ahead. I don't understand how it's 4th and 2, and you know you're not going to get a stop, so they still don't go for it. They still punt it back to back and just keep the defense on the field when you know that they're likely not going to stop it. And then at this point, I just can't watch Geno Smith anymore. Like, I don't care. Like, put someone else in. I don't care if it's Aidan O'Connell, if it's Kenny Pickett. Like, I'm done watching Geno Smith. The guy can't run. He can't read a defense. I mean, we wasted a 3rd-round pick, I think. I wanted your guys' thoughts. I love your guys' thoughts and opinions, and you guys always keep it real. Yeah, man, I can't even say go Raiders at this point. I don't know what to think. It's just so frustrating, man. But keep doing what you guys do, man. I love the show, and wanted your comments. It's like Raider therapy. Thanks, guys. Take care.
That's right. We might have to take that psychologist exam, Mo, the amount of therapy that we're doing so far this season. Raider Jay, man, I just want to tell you, we appreciate it. I wasn't laughing at you. I'm laughing at you at the fact that you guys are in pain. It's a sympathy laugh because it's brutal for fans. But the Geno Smith thing, I know we haven't talked a lot about Geno Smith because the numbers and the actions speak for themselves. But I think what's missing here, I still don't disagree with the signing. Now, we didn't know we were getting rookie Geno, right? We knew the offensive line was shaky, but we didn't know that they would screw with the entire lineup and make it worse with Brennan Carroll, who won't lose his job, folks. I hate to tell you, should at the bye, but won't. If he does, I'd be shocked, beyond shocked. But Mo, Geno Smith will be the starter in next week or the week after when they get back in it. Don't you agree with me?
Yeah, he's gonna be the starter. It's not gonna make the callers feel good about it. He's gonna be a starter because of what they spent to get him. So they're gonna try to make things better and reassess during the bye week. I don't know how much that's gonna help. My question is, and I should say my thought is, what happened between Geno Smith in week 1 and the rest and after that? What happened after the Patriots game? Whatever the Raiders offense or Geno Smith in particular left in New England, the Raiders need to go back to New England and get what they left there offensively. Because I don't get how you get that Geno Smith. I know he threw a pick in that game, but it bounced off Brock Bowers' hands, went to the defender's hands. I get that, but Geno Smith looked like what we thought we were going to get for the rest of the season. Like, this is the Geno Smith we're going to get. He's going to throw the ball downfield. Raiders offense is going to look presentable and competitive, and they're going to be able to close games with their offense and a veteran quarterback. What happened after that game? Because you got that one small sample size of, okay, this looks like it could work, to this is not going to work. Bench him. And I would just want to know what changed between week 1 and week 2 and the rest of the season. But like you said, Scott, I expect Geno Smith under center against the Jaguars in week 9. Will it get better? I hope so. But as you said, the other Murph said on the post game, maybe it's part of it. Now, Geno Smith has been stinky. I'm not absolving Geno Smith, but part of it could be he really doesn't trust that offensive line. And if he doesn't trust that offensive line, he needs to communicate that to the coaching staff.
And Mo, I'll say he probably, again, this is total conjecture. I'm just completely guessing, and it might even sound conspiratorial. I don't think he trusts Chip Kelly. Because if you look at the offense Chip Kelly's calling, it's freaking brutal. Now, I know they dumbed it down to help him out a little bit, which a lot of coaches do for a series or two in a game. But what Chip Kelly's calling out there too is not impressive at all. It's so vanilla. It looks like a preseason offense a lot of the times. That's what it reminded me of against the Chiefs. You're playing the Chiefs in Kansas City, and you're coming out with, quarter one versus the Cardinals in preseason week 1. Like, that's the kind of crap. So I think my guess is, has he not only lost confidence in himself? Yes, but I think he's probably lost confidence in the entire situation. Yeah. And as Jeff Murphy told us on the post game, it's like, for those of you out there who golf, I'm not a big golfer, but I got a lot of friends who are way into golf, way too much into golf, I may say. And it's mental. Well, golf is a mental game, right? Quarterback is a mental position. It is so mental. And so if you're in the wrong mental space, everything suffers. And so I think that's where Geno Smith is. And I still don't disagree with the signing. Would I have hoped they got a quarterback? Yes. But I also agreed with Geno Smith as far as a bridge guy. We've always called him a bridge on this show, right, Mo?
Yeah,
we've always called him a bridge. As far as a bridge goes, okay, fine. For a year or so, fine.
The problem with what the Raiders did with the quarterback position is they didn't draft the quarterback along with Geno Smith. I don't disagree with the signing because we didn't think Geno Smith. No, who thought Geno Smith would be this bad? Let's be honest. So for the people that say, oh, you guys thought Geno Smith was thought he was going to be? Nobody thought Geno Smith was going to be this bad based on what we saw over the last 2 years. The issue, though, is you always have a plan B at the quarterback position, right? And I say this again. I said this last week. What did the Seattle Seahawks do, Scott? Just like the Raiders, they signed a bridge gap quarterback in Sam Darnold. But what else did they do? They drafted Jalen Milroe. So just in case Sam Darnold was a disaster, you start developing Jalen Milroe, your rookie quarterback. What did the Raiders not do? Draft a quarterback early. They waited to the back of the draft to get Cam Miller, and now they don't have a guy to put in behind Geno Smith just in case he stinks.
And Mo, they could have taken a quarterback in the second round. Now, it's not that I don't like Jack Besh. Don't get me wrong. But the last thing they needed help at wide receiver, but they didn't go out. That's another thing but Spytek didn't do. They weren't committed to Jacoby Myers long-term because they didn't sign him to an extension. Now, if you would have signed Jacoby Myers to an extension in the offseason and said, you're our number one guy, okay, I might disagree that he's a true number one, but at least you tell me that's your guy. They go get Jack Besh in the second round. They could have very easily gotten a quarterback. Jalen Milroe, remember, he slid in the draft. I understand why. But he was a guy that people thought was going to go number 1 overall before the Cam Ward surge. So you're absolutely right about that. And that's where, for me, as an objective observer, I don't understand what the plan was. If the plan was to rebuild, like Raider Rube argued, this is always going to be a big rebuild. Okay, that's fine. Then why didn't you get a quarterback?
It's astounding to me. Right, you get a backup plan.
Can you hear me, buddy?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, you're frozen.
Oh, there we go. Hey, Mo. Hold on.
I can hear you, but you're...
Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Because we had a hiccup.
Yeah, you're sort of back now.
You're breaking up on me, though, but let me see. Okay. I think you're back now. Okay. So I made that point about you didn't sign a quarterback, so take off from there.
Yeah, the astounding part of this is they went out and got a backup plan for Jacoby Myers and didn't get a backup plan for Geno Smith. And I think part of that is because Pete Carroll probably believed in Geno Smith so much based on what he did in Seattle, but you just never know. And the fact that they had to go out and get Kenny Pickett because they didn't get a backup plan in the draft for Geno Smith speaks volumes. That's the flaw in their roster building process. So now since you didn't spend a draft pick on a quarterback during the draft, now you got to send a draft pick to the Cleveland Browns to get Kenny Pickett. Make it make sense, Scott.
And not only that, but they got Kenny Pickett, and I agreed with and you and I agreed with the Kenny Pickett acquisition as a insurance policy, and the blind loyalty that Pete Carroll, this is his fault. The blind loyalty that he's had with Geno Smith, he hasn't even gone to their backup plan, who they got just in case something like this happened.
Coaching malpractice, as they say, Scott. Coaching malpractice.
Coaching malpractice. Well said. Oh, all right. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Silver and Black today. I know Mo and I got stuff off our chest. You guys got stuff off your chest. Mo, let everybody else know what you got coming up this week so they can keep track of you.
Have a Raider VOD out in Bleacher Report talking about the changes that the Raiders need to make during the bye week. I'll also talk about whose fingerprints are most on this mess. Is it John Spytek? Is it Pete Carroll? Is it the players? That's been a lot of talk within Raider Nation. It's a lot of the blame game, the finger pointing. Well, I'll break it down at Bleacher Report and tell you what I think. Who's at fault most for this 2-5 mess?
All right, that's going to be must-watch video, so make sure you get the Bleacher Report app so you can watch Mo do his thing. And for Thursday's show, Mo, I'm thinking we're going to do mostly calls. So if you want to call in, if you called in and didn't get on this time, we're going to get to as many calls as we can because it's going to be a slow week. Unless, I mean, I'm hoping, Mo, by the time you and I get back on here, that we've had a John Spytek press conference and we can talk about that because that'll be interesting. To me, that's the only news that we're going to get this week. Unless they change some staff members, they make some changes and are public about it, which I don't think they necessarily would be until next week when they get prepared for the Jaguars. So we'll see where they're at. But if not, excuse me, our next show will be primarily callers. We want to hear what you guys have to say. And I'm going to challenge you guys again. What would you do? What would you do? And I'm not just, don't come at us with just fire everybody. Now, I know that's an option at the end of the season. But besides firing people, what would you do moving forward with this team the rest of the season? The season's done with as far as having any hopes of playoff or any of that kind of stuff. But what do you want the Raiders remaining in this season? Give us that call, 702-900-7869, 702-900-7869 is the number. Mo, my friend, take care of yourself. We'll see you next time.
Take care, Scott. Keep your head up, Raider Nation, somehow. All
right. For our producer, there we go. Sorry, you broke up on me there for a second, buddy, but we got you. We got you. Okay. So for our producer, Mike Robier at Odyssey, for Mo Moton, I'm Scott Gulbransen. This has been Silver and Black today. Raider Nation, we'll see you next time.